Okay, moving on to histograms. So we're going to regularly be asked to construct and work with histograms. The first thing to notice, the first thing to point out is that the intervals at the moment don't seem to have a top value. So I'm going to quickly input some top values. So this should be 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 45, 45 to 50, and 50 to 70. All right, so those can be assumed from the beginning points of the next value. We're asked to draw a histogram. In histograms, the vertical axis is the frequency density, and that's the first thing that we're going to need to calculate. Frequency density is going to equal the frequency divided by the class width. The frequency divided by the class width. All right, the class width is what's the difference in between the smallest and the biggest value within the class. So for this first interval, the class width is 10. 20 minus 10 gives me a class width of 10. So a frequency density, I'm going to add an extra column just here. I'm going to calculate that by doing 2 divided by 10 gives me 0.2. That's the frequency density. The next group, the frequency was actually 0. So 0 divided by 10 is also going to give me 0. Here, the frequency is 6, and it's going to be 6 divided by 15. Don't get carried away because we've had a couple of 10s. Always check what the class interval size is and make sure we're dividing by the right thing. 6 divided by 15, 0.4. Okay, 4 divided by 5, 0.8. I'm starting to get an idea of the scale that I'm going to use for the frequency density. Next, I've got 22 divided by a class width of 20. That gives me 1.1. And finally, quite a large class width here, class width of 30. 12 divided by 30 gives me 0.4. Okay, so what are we out to do? We're out to produce the histogram that represents this situation. The x-axis is going to be the ages, and the y-axis, the vertical axis, is going to be the frequency density. First, we need to make sure that we can fit these in as we need to, or as appropriate. Okay, so I've got some axes here. Let's just go ahead and make sure these values can fit in. Yeah, I think we'll be good. We can get up to 100 along this x-axis. And my y-axis needs to go up to 1.1. I can just about do that. All right, and ready to produce the histogram. So I want to draw bars that represent each of these classes, each of these intervals. So the first one needs to go from 10 to 20, and it should have a height of 0.2. Okay, the next one doesn't even actually exist, so there is no bar to draw in between 20 and 30. There were no people in that age range on the coach party. Okay, so the next interval is 30 to 45, and I need that to go up to 0.4. Okay, the next one is 45 to 50, and I need that to go up to 0.8. After that, 50 to 70, I need to go up to 1.1. Okay, after that, 70 to 100 should go up to 0.4. Okay, and there's our completed histogram. All right. Okay, so moving on to the second part of the question, we're not going to escape working on the mean. We've been asked to find an estimate for the mean. This very regularly happens within histogram questions, and we're going to revert to our technique where we use midpoints and the frequency to calculate. So I'm going to add to the top of this diagram space for some midpoints, and my midpoints are 15, 25, 37.5, 47.5, 60, and 85. All right, with these are my midpoints and the frequencies, let's go ahead, once again, calculate an estimate for the mean. All right, so X bar, should be getting familiar with this now, is the sum of the frequency times midpoint divided by the total frequency. A little bit of calculator work here. So what do we get from that? 2785 all over 46. Gives me an answer of 60.54 as an estimate for the mean. You know it by now already. Let's do a quick sense check. Is that going to be a sensible answer? Looking at the diagram, well, Here's the bar with the biggest area right in the middle. And if I guesstimate that there's around about the same area to the left and to the right, then yes, this bar should contain the mean, and it just about does. 60.54 is in that bar between 50 and 70. Going to the frequency table, that was the one that had the highest frequency, that group, and this is the one that I'm talking about. I had 12 values before that, I have 12 values after that. It will be sensible for me to expect the mean to be within that interval. And 60.54 is almost right in the center of that. Okay, we'll investigate during A-level maths a little bit more about why it wasn't exactly in the middle. What else can we tell from this histogram?